NBC News reports this evening that Democrats will introduce 2 articles of impeachment against President Trump tomorrow morning.
3 News' Lena Lai tells us what happened today and lays out what's next in the impeachment process.
After more than 2 months of investigation and political bickering,
for the next 4 hours, you're going to try to overturn the result of an election with unelected people giving testimony.
Will suspend.
Closing arguments in the House Judiciary Committee with attorneys for both sides laying out the case for and against impeaching President Trump.
To coerce a foreign country to help him cheat to win an election is a clear and present danger.
There is simply no clear evidence that President Trump acted with malicious intent.
Democrats say the president abused his office by pressuring Ukraine to investigate a political rival by withholding military aid, then blocked Congress from investigating. Republicans pointed out no one testified about a direct order from President Trump.
It's a disgrace what's happened.
Meanwhile, the president sounded off on a different report. The Justice Department Inspector General's new findings that ruled out political bias in the FBI investigation of the Trump campaign, but did find the FBI made serious mistakes in relying on an unverified anti-Trump dossier. So what happens next? The House Judiciary Committee could vote on articles of impeachment by the end of the week, including abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. Then comes debate by the full House, where Speaker Nancy Pelosi controls when the debate begins and for how long. That would be followed by a House vote, where the articles would likely be passed by the Democratic majority and President Trump would be impeached.
After the Judiciary Committee vote on articles of impeachment this week, the full House vote could happen as early as next week. So if the president is impeached, the Senate trial would likely begin after the holidays in January. Russ, is happening at a fast clip.
Yes, Lena, and just to underscore what we learned tonight, the 2 articles that will be introduced tomorrow are abuse of power and obstructing Congress.
That's correct.
All right, Lena Lai in the newsroom. Thank you.
You bet.